did you learn about the game of money through this process? Because it's interesting once you learn about financial leverage and how to think about these things, you know?
I didn't learn about that stuff until after the acquisition, to be honest. It's like, honestly, my wife was much more the one that was like dealing with finances when we had no finances. And then it was like, it became an interesting thing to me after the acquisition. I was like, oh, how do you diversify a portfolio? And like, what do we want to do with this? So honestly, it wasn't until after.
So let's talk about so you raise the money, you build out the platform, you're good. And now you're like, okay, we want to exit. Right. And so, no. Oh, okay. So yeah, let's, okay. So you raise the money.
Yeah,
what
totally
happens
different.
next? Okay, good.
Yeah. So honestly, like the acquisition stuff just came up randomly. So
you're focused on building, you're focused on good business principles and actually building a company.
Yeah. We were focused on continuing building the platform and like expanding it and growing it. We had other products ideas that would ultimately be built later on. But it was like, it was very much we're going to continue doing this. Did not ever think we would exit during residency. Like I was expecting if we ever did exit, for it to happen 2 or 3 years as an attending, like into my attending. And so this was, September of 2021. I was pitching I think it was an investment banking firm. And basically it was like, hey, do you guys want to use our platform for due diligence on any healthcare related things that you're looking at? And they were like, hey, we actually know some companies that might be interested in acquiring your company. This was like 25 minutes into the meeting it's like a 30-minute typical meeting.
With an investment bank?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they were like, because they started asking weird questions like, hey, what is your revenue traction? What do your numbers look like? And all this stuff. And I was like, what are you guys getting at? And then the person was like, yeah, we have 2 companies that might be interested in this exact product. And I was like, I mean, sure, introduce me via email. Like I'll always have a conversation. And so they introduced us to one company. And I ended up getting on a call with their VP of Corp Dev like a week or 2 later. And
quick question.
It was all...
Sorry. And by the way, if I ask a question that you cannot answer or don't feel comfortable, just say that. At that point, what was your, and again, I need to educate both my like physician audience and like my medtech audience, your MRR or monthly recurring revenue, like run rate at that point. If it was MMR or ARR.
Yeah. So ARR then was probably, I'm guessing around like 400K. Honestly, can't remember.
Nice. And for those
so
listening,
it wasn't like insane.
Annual recurring revenue. So it's 400K. Okay, perfect. Got it.
Yep. So from there, we basically jumped into that call, or I jumped into that call, and he was like all about acquisition. He was like, yeah, I'm going to bring this to like the CEO and like, we'll see what happens. We're really interested. It was like, it was some kind of staffing company that was not necessarily like a healthcare focused staffing company, but I guess they were interested in getting more into medicine and working with physicians. And so after that call, I was like, well, that's interesting. Maybe I should figure out what does it actually look like to sell a company? Because again, I hadn't researched any of that. Like I was still very much in like, how do you build a startup, not how do you exit a startup? So that brought me down like a gigantic rabbit hole of watching YouTube videos. And like there was a series that I think a Stanford Business School put out that was all about like M&A and how do you do it. And they brought together a bunch of
need to watch people. That. I know which one you're talking about. I remember seeing that. So is that worth, because I remember seeing that and I was like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm skeptical when I see like these, universities like Harvard or Stanford, when they put out stuff on startups. Some of it's good, some of it's just absolute garbage. So that series was actually good, in your opinion? Yeah,
because they actually had panelists that like ran M&A, so like corp dev people, lawyers, and stuff like that. So bankers. And I was like, because honestly, it's a completely different experience selling a company than it is building a company and getting venture capital money.
Oh,
like
totally.
A completely different process. And
Would you say it's more intense?
Honestly, it's a little bit more fun because like once you realize that, hey, people are interested in this technology and it's like earlier than you ever anticipated it happening, it was pretty exciting. It was like, and it's so different than anything else. And so, yeah, we literally just like learned the process as much as we could. I read a bunch of Medium articles. And so what I did was I was like, hey, we're getting acquisition interest. Let's go out, because we had built a list like probably at the very beginning of the company formation of like who we could potentially exit to. So who could acquire this technology that actually might want to. So we had a list of probably like 20 different companies, both public and private, that we would reach out to eventually once that day happened. It just happened a lot sooner than we thought. So I did the same thing that I did with every customer and every physician. I literally went on LinkedIn. I befriended like every person in corp dev at all these different companies. I found their email addresses. I sent emails. And I was basically like, hey, we're a small company. We're 18 months old or 16 months old, whatever it is. Here's our traction. Here's our revenue. We're into we got acquisition interest literally like 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. Would you be interested in meeting? And so I sent probably 15 to 20 messages to folks and ended up jumping on first calls with probably 10 of them. Mm-hmm. And then after those initial meetings, we probably jumped on second, third, and fourth calls with about 6 of those 10. And then November of 2021, we ended up getting 2 offers back-to-back, term sheets, same day, 3 hours apart. And I was like, oh, game's on. Okay. So we got the first one from a private company and the second one from GoodRx. So we looked at both term sheets. They were very, very different term sheets. The private company one was much more of like almost like a private equity acquisition model where it's like, we'll acquire 60% of the company, you'll retain 40%. And basically like whatever you make when you're here at this company, we will give you 40% of the earnings. I could have stayed in medicine with that one. But then the GoodRx offer was much higher in terms of just like the cash and the stock deal. And it was 100%. We're going to acquire all of the company. So we ended up playing them both off each other. We had 2 offers. So we negotiated both and ended up basically 2xing the GoodRx offer and like probably more than 2xing the other one too.
Isn't that
yeah,
it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say so what's fascinating, and I think his name is Jonathan Taylor. There's a founder I met many years ago in Florida named Jonathan Taylor, who I think had 3 different exits, and I think the total amount of those exits, it's like 1 or 2 billion, give or take a billion, right? But essentially like a large amount. And he said that one of the things that differentiated him as an entrepreneur is that he spent more time thinking about the last days of the company than anybody else, because one of the software companies he exited, I think when they came to the table and started negotiating, was valued at like $300 million or something. And then 6 months later, they exited for like $500 or $600 million. And his point was like, in those 6 months of negotiation, he added more value to the company than the 2 or 3 years prior. And so you were saying that essentially that you exited 2x what your valuation was, like roughly, right? And so when you think about that, how long was your negotiation with GoodRx?
It was pretty quick. So with those 2 term sheets, we went back and forth probably over like a 10 to 14 day period. And nice. It was funny because I remember we emailed the private company. We're like, we're going to go with this other offer. They had no idea who it was. And I was
going to say, when you played them off each other, like you let them both know, like, this is what another offer looks like, etc.
Yeah. So we first went back to the private company and we're like, can you increase the offer to anywhere around what this other company is offering? They did. And then we went back to GoodRx and we're basically like, well, we just got this nice offer. And honestly, it's probably going to be better economics overall long term because we're going to own still a percentage of the company. And then we basically got the new offer from GoodRx, which was more than I was anticipating in terms of like the eventual outcome.
It was a deal killer, essentially. Like they're just like
great. There was no way the other company was going to match it. And so we sent an email to the private company. We're like, hey, yeah, like in order to actually make this deal work, you would have to go up to like X millions of dollars. And they're like, can we get on a call? And so I remember walking home and I ended up talking to the person that was going to eventually acquire the platform. And I was like, look, like this deal is way too good. I honestly don't think you guys can match it. And I told him the number and he's like, no, we can't match it. Good luck.
That's awesome. That makes me so happy.